On Saturday, March 14th, President Donald Trump called into NBC News and said the following about the country the United States has been at war with for 16 days. He said, "Iran wants to make a deal, and I don't want to make it because the terms aren't good enough yet." That statement, made by the Commander-in-Chief of the United States military to a national television audience, carries enormous weight. It suggests that Iran is seeking an exit from the conflict, that back-channel communications are happening, and that the war might be closer to a negotiated resolution than the daily battle reports suggest. Then, less than 24 hours later, on Sunday, March 15th, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi appeared on CBS News' Face the Nation and was asked directly whether Iran was seeking a deal. His answer was precise, unambiguous, and completely contradicted the American president. He said, and these are his exact words, as reported by NPR and CBS News, "No, we never asked for a ceasefire, and we have never asked even for negotiation." He then added that Iran would continue fighting, quote, "until President Trump comes to the point, that this is an illegal war with no victory," end quote. Two statements. Same weekend, same war. Completely opposite claims about whether the country under bombardment is seeking terms for ending that bombardment. One of these statements is false, and determining which one is false is not an academic question. It is perhaps the most important intelligence assessment an American citizen can make about a war being fought in their name with their tax dollars. I went through the full NPR reporting on both statements, CBS News Face the Nation transcripts, Newsweek's war updates, Al Jazeera's Day 16 conflict coverage, the full record of diplomatic communications in this conflict, and historical analysis of how disinformation functions in wartime to give you the complete picture of what each side said, why each side has incentives to say what they said, and what the available evidence suggests about which account is closer to the truth. By the end of this video, you will have the analytical tools to evaluate this contradiction yourself and to understand what it reveals about the decision-making at the top of this conflict. Let's examine both statements carefully. Start with Trump's claim. In his NBC News interview on Saturday, Trump said Iran wants to make a deal, adding that he was not ready to accept the terms as currently presented. This statement has a specific internal structure worth noting. It does not claim that formal negotiations are underway. It does not specify through which channel Iran communicated its desire for a deal, whether through Omani intermediaries who have historically served as a back channel between Washington and Tehran, through Qatar, which has also played this role, through diplomatic back channels involving European intermediaries, or through some other mechanism. It is a characterization of Iranian intent rather than a description of a specific diplomatic event. Trump has made similar statements before during this conflict that have subsequently been challenged or walked back. He told CBS News earlier in the week that the war was pretty much complete and that Iran's military capabilities had been wiped out, statements that his own defense secretary's briefings have not entirely supported given the continued Iranian missile and drone attacks across the Gulf region. The pattern of overly optimistic characterizations followed by reality checks from military and diplomatic sources is one that analysts and journalists covering this administration have documented throughout the conflict. Now examine Araghchi's counterstatement. On CBS Face the Nation on Sunday, Iran's foreign minister said his country never asked for a ceasefire and never asked even for negotiation. He framed Iran's position as fighting until Trump acknowledges the war is illegal and cannot be won. This statement is also worth examining for its strategic context. Araghchi is Iran's chief diplomat. He appears regularly on Western media, including American television networks, precisely because Iran understands that the information war over American public opinion is a real dimension of this conflict. His statement serves multiple Iranian audiences simultaneously. For Iranian domestic consumption, it demonstrates that the Islamic Republic is not capitulating under military pressure, which is essential for regime legitimacy in a system that has built its identity around resistance to American coercion. For international audiences, particularly the non-aligned nations that Iran is cultivating for diplomatic support, it frames Iran as the party willing to fight rather than the party seeking terms. For the American audience watching CBS News, it directly challenges the credibility of the American president's characterization of the diplomatic situation. The historical precedent for this kind of contradictory public communication during active conflicts is extensive and instructive. In virtually every major conflict, both parties have incentives to misrepresent the state of diplomatic communications for strategic advantage. A party that signals it wants a deal publicly loses negotiating leverage because the other side knows it is willing to accept some outcome rather than continue fighting indefinitely. A party that signals it does not want a deal maintains ambiguity that can be useful in multiple ways simultaneously. Iran's consistent public posture since the war began has been one of absolute defiance, with the foreign minister saying today they would fight as long as it takes, and Iran's Parliament Speaker Ghalibaf previously saying Iran is certainly not seeking a ceasefire. This public posture is entirely consistent with Iran simultaneously using back channels to explore what terms might be acceptable for de-escalation, because the back channel and the public posture serve different audiences and different strategic purposes. The available external evidence on the question of whether any diplomatic communication is actually occurring cuts in a specific direction. 2 Indian-flagged tankers crossed the Strait of Hormuz safely yesterday after India's Prime Minister Modi spoke directly with Iran's President Pezeshkian. Turkey secured similar passage for its vessels. A senior Iranian official told CNN earlier this week that Tehran is considering allowing oil tankers through the strait provided cargo is traded in Chinese yuan. These are not the actions of a party with absolutely no interest in any form of negotiation or accommodation. They are the actions of a party that is selectively engaging with specific proposals on specific terms while maintaining a public posture of total resistance. The question is whether the selective accommodation Iran has offered to India and Turkey represents the beginning of a broader diplomatic movement, or whether it is a tactical device to divide American coalition partners without any intention of engaging the United States directly. Trump's statement that the terms are not good enough yet carries its own revealing implication. If Iran was not seeking a deal at all, as Araghchi claims, there would be no terms to evaluate. The phrase "not good enough yet" implies that Trump has been presented with some set of terms and has assessed them as insufficient. That is a different description of the diplomatic situation than no communications are happening. Whether those terms came through Oman, Qatar, China, or some other channel, the existence of terms that Trump has reviewed and found insufficient is logically inconsistent with Araghchi's claim that Iran has not asked for negotiation. Either Trump is fabricating terms that do not exist, or Araghchi is misrepresenting Iran's diplomatic communications, or there is a distinction between the formal foreign ministry channel that Araghchi represents and back-channel communications conducted through the IRGC, the presidency, or other Iranian government entities that Araghchi may not be fully read into. For American voters and taxpayers, this contradiction matters in the most practical terms. A war that is moving toward a negotiated resolution and that will end in 4 to 6 weeks, as the Pentagon projects, has a different set of financial implications than a war with no diplomatic path that Iran is prepared to sustain as a long war of attrition. The Goldman Sachs recession probability increase, the mortgage rate pressure, the gas prices at $3.70, and climbing, the grocery bill increases still working through the supply chain. All of these financial impacts have a duration that is directly tied to whether this war is closer to Araghchi's long war posture or Trump's deal imminent posture. American households need to make financial planning decisions. Businesses need to make investment decisions, and the Federal Reserve needs to make interest rate decisions based on their best assessment of how long this conflict will last. The contradiction between Trump and Araghchi on whether any diplomatic movement is occurring is therefore not just a political question. It is the most economically consequential factual question of the moment. Let's bring this all together. Trump told NBC News on Saturday that Iran wants to make a deal, but the terms are not good enough yet. Iran's foreign minister told CBS Face the Nation on Sunday that Iran never asked for a ceasefire and never asked for negotiation. These two statements directly contradict each other. Both speakers have strategic incentives to characterize the diplomatic situation in ways that serve their respective interests. The external evidence, including Iran's selective granting of straight access to India and Turkey through direct diplomatic engagement, suggests that Iran is capable of and willing to engage in selective de-escalation, complicating the picture of absolute non-negotiation that Araghchi presented. Trump's reference to terms he has reviewed implies some form of diplomatic communication has occurred. The truth is almost certainly more complicated than either public statement suggests. But the gap between the two claims is the gap that is determining gas prices, mortgage rates, recession risk, and the financial trajectory of the American economy. Watch for any confirmation from a neutral third party, whether Oman, Qatar, or China, of the existence of formal back-channel communications, because that confirmation would be the clearest available signal of which characterization of the diplomatic situation is closer to reality. If this analysis helped you evaluate a contradiction that is directly connected to your financial situation and your family's security, please hit the like button and subscribe so you do not miss the follow-up. Drop a comment with your assessment of who you believe. I will see you in the next one.